All right. Good afternoon. In a short while, we will be joined by our friend Carl Scow, the Deputy Executive Director of the World Food Program, who's just returned to Gaza, and he'll be here to talk to you about that visit. And as a reminder, on Monday, 12:45, the Secretary General and the Deputy Secretary General, along with the Undersecretary General for Economic and Social Affairs, Mr. Lee Junhua, will be here to present the Sustainable Development Goals report. Given that these three illustrious people will be here, we will not have a noon briefing. Today is the International Day of Reflection and Commemoration of the 1995 genocide in Srebrenica. In a message for the day, the Secretary General notes that as we mark this anniversary in Srebrenica, the worst atrocity on European soil since the Second World War, he stresses that this day is not only a moment of reflection, it is also a call to vigilance and action. The Secretary General points out that at a time when hate speech, denial, and divisions are gaining ground, we must stand firm for truth and justice, adding that we must detect early warning signs and response before violence takes hold, and that we must respect international law, we must defend human rights, and we must uphold the dignity of every individual and also invest in reconciliation and peace. Also to note that Rosemary DiCarlo, the Undersecretary General for Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, represented the Secretary General at the official ceremony that took place in Bosnia-Herzegovina today. In her remarks, she noted that the genocide in Srebrenica remains one of the darkest chapters in Europe's recent history, a stark reminder of the consequences of hatred, division, and failure to protect the civilians. She emphasized that the legacy of Srebrenica must be a world that never again turns away in the face of atrocity. Also present from the UN side was Miguel Angel Moratinos, who, as you know, is the High Representative for the UN Alliance of Civilizations. Turning to the situation in Gaza, the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us that every day without ceasefire brings more preventable deaths, children dying in pain, hungry people shot while trying to reach the trickle of aid that is allowed in. And today, once again, we've seen horrifying reports of casualties, dozens of them, among people in Rafah who were simply trying to get food and other basic supplies for their families. Meanwhile, the fuel crisis remains acute. Yesterday, for the second straight day, our colleagues in Gaza were able to bring into the Gaza Strip about 75,000 liters of much-needed fuel. This is, of course, a positive development. However, these amounts are a small portion of what is required to sustain life-saving operations on a daily basis in Gaza. To be clear, fuel is... Should I start again for Gaza? Okay, so let me start the Gaza bit again. So, no, don't be sorry. You're being proactively helpful, both of you. Thank you. Turning to Gaza, I can tell you that every day without a ceasefire brings more preventable deaths, children dying in pain, and hungry people shot while trying to reach the trickle of aid that is allowed in. And today, once again, we've seen horrifying reports of casualties, dozens of them among people in Rafah, who were simply trying to get food and other basic supplies for their families. Meanwhile, the fuel crisis remains acute. Yesterday, for the second straight day, our colleagues were able to pick up 75,000 liters of fuel and bring them into the Gaza Strip. This is, of course, a much positive development. However, these amounts are a small portion of what is actually required to sustain life-saving operations every day in Gaza. And to be clear, fuel is still running out in Gaza as more fuel is needed than what is actually being brought in. If the current limits aren't lifted immediately, and so we can bring in greater volumes, more services will go dark. We also urgently need unimpeded safe access inside Gaza. Yesterday, our teams could provide hospitals with some of the fuel that came in, but only in the south. That's because Israeli authorities denied our attempt to bring fuel to the north. Such denials are life-threatening. We know that hospitals in the north are on the verge of shutting down, but it's not just hospitals. Fuel is also running out of ambulances. It's running out for water treatment facilities, and it is running out for many other essential services.
all of which are at risk of collapsing. Overall, out of the 15 humanitarian movements attempted yesterday that were coordinated with the Israeli authorities, where coordination was required with the Israeli authorities, 5 were denied outright, 4 were initially approved but then faced impediments on the ground, and only 6 were fully facilitated. Critical missions such as evacuation of vulnerable people from high-risk areas, the retrieval of vehicles and spare tires, and the assessment of medical equipment could not be accomplished. The facilitation of movements also needs to be timely. OCHA reports that on Wednesday, Israeli authorities denied a request to reach part of Gaza authorities where 18 injured people were trapped under the rubble. By the time the mission was finally allowed in through yesterday, no one was found alive. And another important reminder from OCHA is that the much-needed operations such as distribution of tents cannot even be attempted as stocks are fully depleted, and Israeli authorities are blocking the entry of any shelter material for over 130 days now. Meanwhile, active hostilities and insecurity continue to put civilians, including aid workers, at risk. But this Wednesday and again yesterday, a total of 5 strikes hit a few hundred meters from where aid workers go. This included a UN staffer. Thankfully, none of the workers were injured. And also yesterday, members of the Red Cross and Red Crescent societies were shot at and injured on their way to help a colleague who had been injured and unreachable since last Friday. In all cases, the movements had been coordinated with the Israeli authorities. And still on Gaza, I just want to share some updated numbers from the ones that were released this morning from our colleagues in the Office of Human Rights. They tell us that 819 Palestinians were reportedly killed trying to get food in Gaza. That's and the breakdown, according to our human rights colleagues, that 634 of them were killed in the vicinity of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation distribution points. 185 died close to other humanitarian aid convoys, including some run by us. This data was collected between May 27th of this year, and as it's valid as of July 10th. People don't seem to know what I do every day at noon. The data is based on information gathered by our human rights colleagues through various reliable sources, including medical, human rights, and humanitarian organizations. All of those numbers highlight the need for independent investigations onto why people are being killed while just trying to access aid. Turning to Syria, the UN humanitarian and resident coordinator there, Adam Abdelmullah, announced yesterday that a $625,000 allocation from the Syrian Humanitarian Fund to support emergency response efforts following the devastating wildfires that are taking place in the country's coastal areas. The new funds will enable humanitarian partners, primarily the Syrian Arab Red Crescent, to deliver urgent assistance of thousands of people impacted by the fires. We and our partners continue to closely coordinate with and support local national authorities' response. Assessments continue in 60 communities. Initial reports indicate that the blazes have displaced hundreds of individuals, destroyed agricultural land and critical infrastructure, and obviously severely and negatively impacted the livelihood of many communities. Mr. Abdelmullah called for an urgent additional support. Our humanitarian colleagues stress that this timely and flexible funding is critical to saving lives and trying to rebuild and protect communities. An update on something a number of you have been asking me about, which is the Memorandum of Understanding between the UN and the Russian Federation. The final consultations meeting on the Memorandum of Understanding between the United Nations and the Russian Federation took place today in Geneva. That Memorandum of Understanding, as you will recall, was signed on July 22nd, 2022, with an implementation period of 3 years as part of the efforts of the Secretary General on global food security in the context of the Istanbul Agreements. The UN committed under the memorandum to effort to facilitate the transparent and unimpeded access of food and fertilizer, including raw materials to produce fertilizers, including ammonia, originating from the Russian Federation to world markets. This includes impediments that may arise in the sectors of finance, of insurance and logistics. To accomplish this, the Secretary General established a team led by Rebecca Greenspan, the Secretary General of UNCTAD. He tasked her to engage with all relevant stakeholders, including the private sector actors, with a view to realizing the established exemptions related to the agricultural sector. Over the 3 years, we and the Russian Federation maintained constructive consultations to find solutions to address global food security. This work shows that even in the most challenging circumstances, the United Nations can convene around a shared commitment to global food security, and the Secretary General will continue to make his good offices available towards that objective. Moving just south of Florida to Haiti, our political mission there, BNU, and our human rights office there warn that escalating gang violence outside of the capital Port-au-Prince has now claimed the lives of over 1,000 people since October of last year and forced hundreds of thousands to flee to safety. This, they say, is happening as gangs continue to extend their influence along key routes in the north and in the center of the country and towards the Dominican Republic. Haitian authorities have deployed specialized police units supported by the Multinational Security Support Mission. This has slowed the advances of the gangs to some extent, but ultimately the report says that given their lack of resources, they've been unable to reassert control over the affected areas. Against this backdrop, our colleagues say that human rights abuses by self-defense groups have increased. Summary executions involving Haitian security forces have also been committed against individuals accused of supporting gangs. The report calls on the Haitian authorities to ensure police have the necessary resources to tackle gang violence in full respect of international human rights law. The report also calls on the international community to maintain BNU's full operational capacity so the office can continue to advise and support the Haitian government. Strengthening the multinational security support mission and the full implementation of the arms embargo will be equally essential to restore security and the rule of law in Haiti. And I have a statement for you, hot off the press, on the situation in the Red Sea. The Secretary General strongly condemns the resumption of Houthi attacks on civilian vessels transiting in the Red Sea, especially the attacks that took place from the 6th to the 8th of July. The sinking of both the motor vessel Magic Seas and the motor vessel Eternity Sea, along with the deaths of at least 4 crew members and injuries to others, is a dangerous re-escalation in this critical waterway. With at least 15 crew members reported missing, the Secretary General calls on the Houthis not to take any action that impede the ongoing search and rescue operations for the crew members that are still missing from those 2 vessels. Beyond being an unacceptable attack on the safety and security of seafarers, these acts also violate the freedom of navigation, cause a hazard to maritime transport, and represent a serious risk of a significant environmental, economic, and humanitarian damage to an already vulnerable coastal environment. The Secretary General emphasizes that international law must be respected by all parties at all times. He also underscores that the Security Council Resolution 2768 related to these Houthi attacks against merchant and commercial vessels must be fully respected. The United Nations remains committed to continuing its efforts towards a broader de-escalation in the region, as well as continued engagement with Yemeni, regional, and international actors to secure a sustainable and peaceful resolution to the conflict in Yemen. Turning to Sudan, the UN Children's Fund and our humanitarian colleagues are sounding the alarm over the deepening nutrition crisis across that country. Alarming new data from UNICEF reveals a 46% surge in the numbers of children being treated for severe acute malnutrition across the Darfur region during the first 5 months of this year compared to the same period in 2024. In North Darfur, the numbers of severely malnourished children has doubled, with more than 40,000 admitted for treatment between January and May. The Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Tom Fletcher, warns that conflict is starving Sudan's children, stressing that vital aid must reach them before it's too late, and that we need access and we need funding now. UNICEF says the situation is equally alarming beyond Darfur. The number of children treated for severe acute malnutrition rose by 70% in North Kordofan. That's 174% in Khartoum state and 680% in Al Jazeera state. In Khartoum and Al Jazeera, UNICEF says the increase in admission rates likely partially reflects an improvement in security and access, improving the ability of mothers to reach health centers for much needed support. And a quick update from the peacekeeping mission in the Central African Republic. Yesterday in Bangui, the leaders of two armed groups, the 3R and the UPC, took part in a ceremony where they committed to laying down their arms and rejoining the 2019 peace agreement. Valentine Rugwabiza, the head of our peacekeeping mission there, welcomed this important step and underscored that beyond the signing of the agreement, which will profoundly reinvigorate the peace process in the country, this is also a moment to celebrate the courage of the Central African people who've chosen dialogue over division, reconciliation over resentment, and peace over conflict. The disarmament and demobilization process will begin in the days to come. It will take place in Ouaka Prefecture, where about 500 combatants have gathered to surrender their weapons and receive demobilization cards. The peacekeeping mission will continue to provide support to the government to carry out this process, as it has done for over 5,000 ex-combatants since 2016. It will also simultaneously deploy national disarmament and demobilization mobile teams on the ground to assist with the verification of weapons and ammunitions collected, as well as to ensure security for both the teams and the overall operation throughout the process. A couple of international days. Today is World Population Day, and the theme this year is empowering young people to create families they want in a fair and hopeful world. In a message for the day, the Secretary General points out that the theme reaffirms the promise of the 1994 International Conference on Population Development, that every person has the right to make informed choices about their lives and their futures. He urges countries to invest in policies that ensure education, healthcare, decent work, and the full protection of reproductive rights. And just to note that at 3 p.m., Dr. Natalia Kanem, Executive Director of UNFPA, will deliver remarks on behalf of the Secretary General at the 2025 UN Population Awards. The committee for the award has selected two laureates in the individual and institutional categories in recognition of their outstanding contributions to population, reproductive health issues, and solutions. And tomorrow is the International Day of Combating Sand and Dust Storms. And more importantly, if I say something springs eternal, what day is it? International Day of Hope. We can only need it. Deji, Edie, then Benny.
Yesterday, you mentioned that the UN is in the process of answering a letter from Ambassador Dorothy Shia from U.S. UN. What is the process now? What is the content of the letter from the U.S.
Well,
on Albanese?
I think made their letter public. It refers to Ms. Albanese, and we're answering the letter.
Has that process been done? I mean,
the letter. I don't know if the letter's actually in the mail. It's on its way to the post box, if I'm not mistaken.
So from the institutional level, does the Secretary General support the rapporteur of her work, no matter what she said?
I think, Deji, let me use the term extensive question and answer period on Ms. Albanese yesterday, and I would refer you to that.
Okay. Not today actually. Yesterday, GHF said they are exploring a new method of delivering aids through community. What suggestion would the UN give GHF to do that?
You know what suggestion I'm going to say, right? I'm going to say whatever they do, and we welcome other partners to work in Gaza and help meet the desperate needs of the people in Gaza, that whatever operation they set up, it is based on our four principles of humanity, impartiality, neutrality, and independence.
Sorry, one last question. The other day, I want to ask you this, but I didn't get a chance. Which does
Did I deny you a chance to ask me a question?
No, it's just you asked me too early to ask you a question the day before yesterday. Okay. Anyway, so I was wondering this for a long time. Which does the UN think is more important to get aid delivery? which is the priority of the United Nations to think about this, to deliver aid while people get killed, or to deliver aid that aid could be grabbed by Hamas in Gaza? Which one do you think is worse?
I'm not in the business of ranking. Our aim, and everyone who works in the humanitarian sphere writ large in Gaza, their aim should be to find ways to feed people without people getting killed. Edie.
Thank you, Steph. I wasn't quite clear on the Memorandum of Understanding between the UN and the Russian Federation, whether it's being extended or not.
It is not being extended. However, we will continue to work on the issues that are included in the MOU.
And what about the Black Sea Grain Initiative? Does that mean that it's basically done?
They were two separate things.
Yes, I know.
And the operation around the Black Sea Grain Initiative ceased working some time ago. Though we continue to push and work on issues relating to freedom of navigation for essential global cargo in the Black Sea. Benny.
Follow up on Gaza. Yesterday, the EU Foreign Affairs Commissioner Katja Kallas. You know her.
Yeah.
She issued a statement that that they have an agreement with the Israelis. The deal means more crossing, open aid, and food trucks entering Gaza, repair of vital infrastructure, and protection of aid workers. Is that what you meant by? Is that going to help?
Okay. Let's thank you for the direct question. The implementation and the activation of what was agreed to would definitely help, right? Opening up of more crossing, more aid going. This is exactly what we've been calling for. We were not a party to the discussions between the EU and Israel. We obviously, as I just said, we welcome the announcement and the content of it, but we have been in regular touch with anyone who has influence over the humanitarian needs in Gaza.
Is that a problem for you that the EU can reach an agreement while you claim every day, including today, that your operation is being impeded?
Well, I mean, I think that not at all. There are different. Listen, there are lots of parties at this sitting around this table. It is clear that certain member states, certain groups of member states, such as the EU, have some influence, more than we do. The aims of what the EU is trying to do is the aim that we share. And I think what they're trying to do, without trying to interpret their goal, is to help us do our work. So it's not we very much welcome their efforts, and there's not a problem. What we want is to see the implementation of it.
Sorry. My question was, is there a reason why the Israelis trust the EU more, and the US, by the way, with other effort than the UN?
Listen, I will leave that to analysts such as yourself, but this is not about the EU saying they will do the work that the UN does. This is about the European Union trying to help the United Nations and the global humanitarian community be able to do their work. Alex, and then go ahead. Dennis, I'm sorry, it's Friday. I'm sorry.
Just to follow up on memorandum, can you tell who participated in the final consultation? So, who's from UN and who's from Russia?
If I'm not mistaken, and you will correct me if I am mistaken, it was the Deputy Foreign Minister, Mr. Vershinin, and from our end it was Rebecca Greenspan, and that I'm not mistaken on. Yes, ma'am. I think we welcome this dialogue between two countries that have faced tensions for some time. We remember the peace treaty that was signed in March, and we think this is a very welcome development in the direction of solidifying what was signed in the treaty. I can tell you that the Secretary General is closely, obviously, following all of these developments. Yes, sir. And then I'll come to you, Nizar.
Thank you, Steph. Reports indicate that the PKK has begun their disarmament process following the agreement with the Turkish government. In May, Secretary General Guterres welcomed the move when it was initially announced as, quote, important steps for a peaceful resolution. My question is, to your knowledge, will the Secretary General and the UN, for that matter, be playing an active role in maintaining these security arrangements, or will that responsibility fall solely on the parties involved? Thank you.
I can tell you that we very much welcome the operationalization of the agreement, or at least the first step of the operationalization. We hope that it will encourage further steps towards lasting peace in the region. And I can also tell you that we are ready to support this in any way that we can, should we be asked. Nizar, and then I'll go to Alex.
Thank you, Stéphane. In addition to hundreds of Palestinian journalists killed in the conflict in Gaza and in the West Bank, the Israelis continue to harass journalists and arrest them. One of them is Nasser al-Laham, our colleague, who has been arrested now for over 5 days, and he's still not charged for anything.
Where was he arrested?
In the West Bank, in Ramallah. For no reason, obviously, except that he's a journalist. His house was ransacked, and he's still in custody. Do you have anything to say about this, especially with this large number of journalists?
I think we have been very clear in expressing our deep concern at not only the lack of journalists in Gaza, but the harassment that journalists have received in the West Bank and generally in this conflict. Okay.
Does the Secretary General call for his release and other journalists like him?
I think we call for clarity to be brought around this case, and for journalists to be allowed to do their work freely without fears of imprisonment or anything else. Alex.
Thanks, Steph. I'll be quick. On the conference, UN conference on two-state solution, there have been some reports that it's been postponed for the end of July. You have any information?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen I've seen the press reports. We're waiting to get some official confirmation. Thank you. I will go get our guest.